I am attending locals later today, and locals today are Genesys format, which I'm pretty excited about because if it was advanced locals, then to be honest with you, it would have been kind of like mid because it would have been without burst protocol and with the old ban list because the new ban list is just in effect after this upcoming weekend. So it would have kind of like been whatever, you know, if it was advanced constructed. So I'm happy it's Genesys locals today. The only thing that I don't know yet is what I'm gonna play because there's two decks that I could realistically play. The first one is Dragon Rulers. The first one is Dragon Rulers, which has been my favorite deck I've played in Genesys so far, period. And the reason why I kind of thought about bringing it back is because, of course, they've added points to Droll and Lockbird recently, and that card was a huge problem for Dragon Rulers. Other than Droll, it was actually a pretty solid deck. I really liked it. It does a lot of drawing. You know, my favorite version of the deck, the one that I've been playing, has not been the best. You know, I haven't been playing like all the tuner stuff, the crazy combos. You can do a lot of cool stuff with Dragon Rulers. But my favorite one was the one where you draw a bunch of cards. You know, I've been playing like Super Rejuvenation, Sacred Sword of 7 Stars, all of the armed dragons that I can discard for the babies, and then they search and draw. Like that deck's been so fun for me. It's a classic. It is a classic. Josh is addicted to drawing cards thing and sacrifices ceiling for it. It was a very classic Josh approach to a deck, but I've been enjoying it, and I do think that's something that is something I value Genesys for, you know, because other decks generally don't make the craziest endboards in Genesys, if we forget for a second that they allowed Rongo to be 30 points for a while. But like in general, in Genesys format, like the stuff like this, I view it as like the kind of format where you can just basically do what you want, to an extent, of course. But more stuff is viable because the power level is lower than advanced constructed. So Dragon Ruler is a deck that with the points increase on Droll and Lockbird, I wanted to revisit it and play it. And so this morning, when I was looking through my cards to find my Dragon Ruler cards, I came across this pile of cards, which is my Cool Tune core, which I got on release of Phantom Revenge, and I haven't been able to play it a single time yet, simply due to not having the time for it. And then I thought about, like, maybe this is also a good idea because this deck is actually good in Genesys format. In advanced constructed format, of course, this deck is not very viable at the moment, at least if the recent results are anything to go by. It has not seen any success in advanced constructed format, but in Genesys format, apparently, it is actually a pretty strong deck. So I'm kind of like between these two. I'm not sure which one I'm going to play. I want to talk about the builds for both a little bit today and just talk about Genesys in general a little bit because, of course, we also got this update that we looked at on stream yesterday that is, you know, I thought about this more after the stream because I was hanging out on YouTube and I saw some other people like reacting to this and talking about this. And I feel like yesterday when I reacted to it for the first time, I kind of looked at it from an advanced constructed player perspective a little bit too much because I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm a big fan of Genesys format, and from a Genesys format perspective, this is a pretty big announcement, to be honest. Like, of course, for advanced constructed players, what this means is like, oh, Genesys is kind of like competing with advanced constructed formats, so you're going to have to decide between the two because there's going to be YCSs for both at the same time, and they get the same prizes. So advanced constructed players are a little worried that maybe like if they win an effect veiler, that might be worth a little bit less because the Genesys players also get an effect veiler. However, if you kind of like flip this and look at it from the other perspective, it's like, yeah, this is a lot of support for Genesys format. You know, tournaments at YCS level, regionals, new prizes, same prizes as YCS. It's a lot of attention to Genesys format as a whole, which I think as someone who likes Genesys, this is pretty exciting news in hindsight. You know, of course, those things like having to decide between two formats and like there being more effect veilers, I think that's something that's a valid concern, but all things considered, if you're a fan of Genesys format, these are pretty hype news, right? And people have been asking for this for a long time, of like another format for Yu-Gi-Oh! That that is officially supported and is getting attention and everything, and Genesys just is that, and so I think that's pretty cool. And at least from my experience personally, for the idea behind Genesys, like I've heard people say like Genesys is not different enough from Advanced Constructed, which might be true for like the short period of time where Rongo FTKs were running wild, but I think right now and also in general, that's not been my experience. Right? I got Rongo locked in one of the rounds at YCS Bologna Genesys. But all things considered, like all of the times I've spent playing Genesys format, the power level is so much lower than Advanced Constructed. Come on, like it's a different environment. It is not modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Light, in my opinion. It is very, very different in terms of what kind of cards are legal and everything. That's how I feel, at least at the moment, and we're gonna see how that goes, because I'm bringing my my GoPro to locals today. We're gonna film the rounds with Genesys, and we're gonna take a look at it on stream tomorrow, and we're gonna see how it goes, and also we're gonna find out if after the last points update, where they did hit Onomath a lot, which I was really happy about, we're gonna see what the environment looks like. I mean, a very simple example is that I'm finding a lot of success with Medolce of all things. Look, here's the thing, right? I've gone, since they've introduced Genesys, okay? I've won locals with Genesys locals with Radiant Typhoon, which, to be fair, was a really strong deck at the time in Genesys format, but was not viable at all in Advanced Constructed, okay? Like, it was a meta deck in Genesys, but not in Advanced Constructed. It will be in Advanced Constructed with the new support, but not at the time. I've won locals with Necros, which is unplayable in Advanced Constructed format, completely unplayable. I've won a what's it called? I've won a side event at YCS Lille with Dragon Rulers, which is also completely and utterly unplayable in Advanced Constructed format. Cool Tune is regarded as one of, if not the best decks in Genesys right now, when it's also completely and utterly unplayable in Advanced Constructed format. We're not talking rogue decks, okay? We're not talking rogue decks that are viable in Genesys. We're talking decks that you literally go 0-4 at Advanced Constructed locals with basically every time. Like, these decks are not playable, okay? And in Genesys, they actually win tournaments, which I think that showcases really well that the power level gap is quite large. And I think it's not fair to say that Genesys is just basically watered down modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it is an entirely different format. As someone who's played Advanced Constructed very actively for years, and who I've also been very active in Genesys format, they are completely different things. If it wasn't for the time rules, would Paleo be okay in Genesys? Absolutely. If it wasn't for the time, I could probably cook up a really nasty Paleo deck if it wasn't for the time rules in Genesys format. But like, you can definitely grind with these decks. You can set 5 going second into most of these decks. Like, it would work. I would get double losses at current time rules all the time, but it could work. I'm still excited about Genesys. I'm still optimistic about Genesys format as a whole. These news are exciting for Genesys format. I just wanted to put that out there because I feel like when I looked at it yesterday, I was putting a little bit too much emphasis on like, okay, Genesys is competing with Advanced Constructed format, which might be a positive for some people, but also a negative. But all things considered, I am happy that we're getting more attention, more prizing towards Genesys format. And I think if this is what keeps happening, then this format might have a pretty cool future. All right. That being said, now we are taking a look at Dragon Ruler and Cool Tune, which are the 2 decks I'm considering for today's locals. I'm gonna be honest with you. Once I've taken a look into Cool Tune, if this deck seems cool, then I keep saying cool. Cool is a word I use a lot, but it feels weird whenever I'm using it in whenever we're talking about Cool Tune. I would like to play this deck today, if I can make it work, if I can figure out how it works, and if we can build it. If I have all the cards, which I should have all the cards I need to play Cool Tune. I would love to play Dragon Rulers, but I think it makes more sense if I try Cool Tune. One reason What? I'm not gonna lie. I'll show you one of the reasons why I wanted to play Dragon Rulers today, which is this. I got this recently, alongside the sleeves from YCS Japan. Which this is sponsored. These are from Yugioh cards. You can get these as well if you want to, but that's besides the point. I'm not being paid for this specific segment or anything like that. I was genuinely excited to show off my Dragon Ruler mat and sleeves with the Dragon Ruler deck in Genesys format. But then I found the Cool Tune cards in my piles of cards when I was looking for the Dragon Rulers, and I was like, you know what? I would really like to play this. But I think the Cool Tune makes more sense for now. Because I've even already made a YouTube video on Dragon Rulers in Genesys format, because I've already played it at a YCS Lil public event. So eventually we're gonna bring the Dragon Ruler deck back. And it might be today if I'm not liking how the Cool Tune deck looks, but I kind of want to try Cool Tune. But yeah, this playmat from YCS Japan, I'm not sure if they still have any in stock, because it was actually quite cheap for what it is. I think it's like about 30 something bucks, which is kind of crazy for considering it's a YCS Japan exclusive. And you can get 10% if you use Josh 10 at Yugioh cards. So feel free to check it out. Also, the sleeves are insane as well. I really want to play these at some point, but yeah. If I play Dragon Rulers, it'd be on that playmat, but yeah. Maybe play Ruler now and wait with Cool Tune until they get their Omni and Burst protocol. Oh, you mean Zalen? You know what? That's the thing, right? We're gonna take a look at both. We're gonna take a look at both decks today. In theory, and then I'll just decide later. All right. So, for Dragon Rulers, this is the one we're gonna start with because I think it's gonna be a little bit quicker. There is two ways to play Dragon Rulers in Genesys format. One of them is the better way, and the other one is my favorite way. And I'm going to go with my favorite way probably, but we're going to talk about the other way a little bit as well. So, fundamentally, I do believe we have to go with the Dragon Ruler ratios that I've been playing all the time. So, if you didn't know, because it's also not very intuitive and doesn't make that much sense, but all of the Dragon Rulers have 7 points in Genesys format, the big ones. So that goes for Blaster, Tempest, Tidal, and Redox. So if you were to play all 12, which this is not all 12, where's the others? There's the Tidal, and there is a Redox somewhere in here. Which I guess the 7 points is kind of intuitive, right? Because they're level 7s. Get it? Get it? If you play all... You can't play all 12 Dragon Rulers together. Because that would be, quick math, 84 points, right? 12 times 7 is 84. So they do fit all in one deck. You can play all 12 Dragon Rulers for 84 points. The Baby Rulers are 0, so you can play as many Baby Rulers as you want. And the new Dragon Rulers... Spectral, Nebulous, as well as the Exceed monsters are all 0 points. So Chasma, Disaster, and Eclipse, they're all 0. So you can play as many babies and as many Exceeds as you want. However, the main deck big Dragon Rulers are all 7 points. Which means if you want to play all of them, you have very little room for any sort of like pointed non-engine. As a result, what I have been doing in previous tournaments is I've played 3 copies of the really important ones, which are Blaster and Tempest, and I've cut on 1 Tidal and 1 Redox. I've played 10 big Dragon Rulers. That's been my ratio for whenever I've played this deck, and I felt like that was fine, because that is a flat 70 points for the Dragon Rulers. Because that lets you play 1 card in particular that I really, really like in this deck, which is Zeus. Because Zeus is 20 points. If you play all 12 Dragon Rulers, you cannot play Zeus. Where's my Zeus? I have a Zeus somewhere. I looked for it this morning. So I have it here. Oh yeah, there's Zeus. What's the end board for Dragon Rulers? Okay, that's where the version of the deck comes in, because Dragon Rulers are actually quite synergistic with a lot of different things that you can play in it. The most common version from what I've seen online is the Rose Dragons, right? People are playing the Rose Dragons because they are level 3 dragon tuners, and you can actually search Red Rose Dragon in this deck, which is relatively easy, via Chasma. So the way Chasma works, in case you're not familiar with the new Dragon Ruler support, because it's not been meta in the advanced constructed format at all, Chasma needs 2 level 7 dragons and has a quick effect where you can detach one material to send a Dragon Ruler from your deck to the graveyard as cost, one of the big level 7s, and apply its effect that it has when it's discarded. So what you can do is you can send Tempest for cost, and then apply its discard effect, which is add a dragon monster from your deck to your hand. So you can search any dragon with Chasma, basically. So the idea is you summon Chasma on turn 1. Usually you send Redox, Tidal, or Tempest to get their discard effects, which is Reborn, Foolish, or Search. And then you leave the Chasma on the field, and on the opponent's turn, you send Blaster for a pop, which is what I've been doing. What you can also do a whole bunch of cringe stuff with this card, and which is what they've been doing. If the deck, I think the deck topped like one regional in advanced constructed format where people did like summon Chasma, use the effect on your turn to send Tidal effect to send Christia, and then on the opponent's turn, Chasma send Redox to reborn the Christia. We're not gonna do any of that in Genesis format, and that's also because Christia is, I'm pretty sure it's 100 points in Genesis, so you couldn't even do that, which is good. But yeah. One alternative thing that you can do if you want to turn the deck more combo heavy in Genesis format is you can play the Rose Dragons, and then you can make like level 10 synchros with them. Like you can play Ruddy Rose Dragon, you can play Cheng Ying, which has great synergy with this deck because the Dragon Rulers all banish, right? So when you're going second into a board, summon Cheng Ying, bring back a Dragon Ruler, banish from field and grave, really strong. You can play Gen X Arms 0, and you can also play Bestial Dispatter. I think Bestial Dispatter has a couple of points. I think it's like 10. But we could fit that. If we wanted to, we could fit that. One example is you could play 10 Dragon Rulers for 70 points. You could play the Dispatter for 10 points, and you could play a Zeus for 20, and that would be a clean 100 right here. These 12 cards would be exactly 100 if I'm not mistaken, because I'm pretty sure Dispatter is 10 points. But yeah. So the Zeus, I feel like, is quite essential for this deck for going second, because you can really easily pump out multiple Exceed monsters and then force the board with Zeus, as well as it has some crazy synergy with Disaster, because Disaster is an Exceed monster that basically has 6 materials. So yeah. So the Synchro combo version of the deck is an option. So that's why I searched for the cards this morning. I have them here. We can think about it. However, I want to present my favorite version of the deck first, which is likely the one I want to play. So what I've been liking is a sub-engine of the... Where are they? The Armed Dragons. All right. So Armed Dragons... I don't even know if you've seen these cards before, if you haven't played specifically Dragon Ruler in Genesis format. I'm not sure if these were actually designed to go into Dragon Ruler decks, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think they have many other synergies in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole. Besides Pile Armed Dragon, all of the Armed Dragons have an effect when they are discarded, or rather, if they are sent to the graveyard to activate a dragon monster's effect, which is basically all of the baby dragons, because all of the baby rulers discard a dragon to summon the rulers from the deck. You just discard the Armed Dragons and get card advantage. So level 3, if it gets sent to grave to activate a dragon, you draw a card. Level 5, if it gets sent to grave, you add a level 5 or higher Wind Dragon. And Armed Dragon Thunder level 7 searches for an Armed Dragon card. So basically, if you have a lot of effects to activate, you want to chain these Armed Dragons together to never pay for your Dragon Ruler effects, basically. Like let's say you draw Burner and Steam and one, let's say Armed Dragon Thunder level 7, these 3 together, right? You go activate Stream, discard Armed Dragon Thunder level 7, summon Tidal from the deck. Armed Dragon Thunder level 7 can then search level 3 or level 5. Let's say you search level 3, and then you activate Burner, discard the 3, summon the blaster from the deck, and then level 3 draws you a card. Right? Really, really simple. They just facilitate activating the baby dragons as often as you want, basically. So I've been trying, in order to make the deck consistent, I've been trying to play as many baby rulers as I can fit, as well as many armed dragons as I can fit. Now, none of these are tuners. So it's a little bit like you're kind of limited to exceed monsters, but I've been enjoying it that way because I feel like the deck is strong enough with just the exceed plays. The exceed plays are actually quite powerful. We can talk about them in a second. But dude, the more I'm talking about this deck, the more I want to play it. Like, the cool tune deck really has to deliver for me to not play this deck today, dude. Do you have space for non-engine? This looks like 30-something engine so far. We don't play non-engine in this deck, basically. We have maybe like one playset of non-engine, which is the beauty of Genesys format, is that this kind of works. This would never work in Advanced Constructed, because basically what we're trying to do is we power through all our dragon rulers. We have basically infinite extenders in the deck because all the baby rulers are extenders. The graveyard is a second resource. We just summon dragon rulers. We make exceeds. If our opponent deals with the exceeds, we bring the dragon rulers back from the graveyard. We try again. We search for follow-up because the dragon rulers, when they're banished, also search. Of course, you can only use one of these effects per turn, but basically you're just trying to power through whatever they're throwing at you. And just like make a board, draw some cards, and outgrind is the idea. So the main win cons of this deck are Chasma, Eclipse, and Disaster. They work in tandem. They're really important to look at together. The first one you're going to make in 99% of your games is Chasma, Dragon Ruler of Auroras, which is the new light big dragon ruler. I've already explained what it does. Quick effect: send a dragon ruler from deck to grave to apply its discard effect. And also, if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special a level 7 dragon ruler from grave or banishment. So basically, summon it on the first turn, get an advantage right away. You can keep it around for disruption on the opponent's turn, or you can overlay it into Disaster, which we'll get to in a second. Then there's Eclipse, which is the dark dragon ruler. It is usually not the first one you want to summon, but it is still pretty good. We can close in on these. It is still pretty good. It says, if this card exceeds summon, target a level 4 or lower dragon ruler in your grave, and then special summon the level 7 or rank 7 dragon ruler that's mentioned on it from your deck or banishment, and then shuffle the targeted monster into the deck. So what you're trying to do with this basically is, if you have Burner in the graveyard, for example, or in the banished pile, you summon Eclipse, you target the Burner. Because Burner mentions Blaster, you summon Blaster from the deck, and this one goes back into the deck. That way you have some recycling for the baby dragons. Preferably, you want to try to recycle them from banished, not from the graveyard. Because in the graveyard, they are a resource to banish for your other dragon rulers. In an ideal case, you put the banished ones back into the deck so you can search them again. So essentially, all things considered, this thing only takes you 1 material because you summon it with 2 level 7s and it gives you 1 level 7 back. And then it also negates spell traps, which is pretty neat. And once you've assembled these two, what you can do is you can overlay them for Disaster, Dragon Ruler of all Apocalypses, which technically is generic. It needs rank monsters. This thing, you cannot make it with 2 level 7s. This thing needs 2 rank 7s. But it does not specify that it needs these 2 in particular, but it only really makes sense if you have these 2. So this thing is actually really broken. It's got 0 attack, 0 defense, but we'll get to that. If this card is exceed summoned, you can target up to 4 level 7 dragon rulers in grave or banishment, attach them to this card, then banish all monsters from your opponent's field and graveyard with the same attribute as the materials that this card has. What this means is, because what you're making this with is light and dark, and you have 4 other dragon rulers in rotation, you attach all 4. Now you have all attributes in Yu-Gi-Oh attached to Disaster. All 6 attributes besides Divine Beast. Someone is going to make that joke, I know. You have all attributes as material on this card, so you're banishing everything your opponent has. From field, and grave. So everything is gone. You banish everything if you summon Disaster this way. And also, you can technically summon it with less material. Like, let's say you're missing Redox from the rotation, you can still summon it. You can still attach the other ones, and then you can still banish everything that isn't Earth. But it makes even more sense when you have all attributes in rotation, because this card gains 4600 attack and defense, while it has all attributes attached, and also is unaffected by other card effects. So it's a 4600 towers, which is a win condition on its own. Now, it's not the same power level as like a Liger Dancer, because once it's summoned and unaffected, it doesn't have any more effects. Like, it can't quick effect Raigeki or negate anything or whatever. And people actually do play kaijus in Genesis format. So I think Disaster alone is not like, it's not a super reliable win condition, but if you can play it in a pretty grindy deck that also has other plays to it, then I think it can be pretty legit, right? To have this as one of your boss monsters, because I think the most powerful part about this card is the on-summon effect, right? Like, summon it and then banish all your opponent's field and graveyard is really, really busted, in my opinion. Also, very, very often, what I do is I summon an unaffected Disaster with as many materials as I can, or, well, if it's unaffected and it has to have all materials, then I swing, and then I Zeus on top of it, which is a 7 material Zeus, which is pretty good in Genesis format, believe it or not. So that's why I really want to play. That's why I really want to play the Zeus in this deck, if I can. But of course, Zeus is going to be an additional 20 points. So you really have to like see if you can make the points work on this. But yeah. My favorite card in this deck is Here There Be Dragons. This is a card that I think most people don't play in this deck. But I've been finding this is the reason why I've been wanting to play this deck, because this is the most fun interaction that this deck has, in my opinion. This card is a quick play spell that says special summon a dragon ruler from your hand, graveyard, or banishment, and then immediately after this resolves, you can exceed summon a dragon ruler exceed monster using only dragon rulers you control. The reason why this is so cool is because you can pass your turn with Chasma and Eclipse on the field, which means you get the effect of Chasma on your opponent's turn to send Blaster and pop a card, and you get the effect of Eclipse of negating a spell trap. And once you've done that, then you activate Here There Be Dragons to reborn a dragon ruler, doesn't matter which one, and then you overlay those two into Disaster on your opponent's turn, which means not only have you got the value from Chasma, you got the value from Eclipse, but you summon the towers on your opponent's turn, so in theory you should be pretty safe to not lose the game or to not die, so you can outgrind your opponent, and you get the on-summon effect of Disaster. You banish your opponent's board as an interruption on your opponent's turn, not just when you hard summon it on your turn, but also on your opponent's turn. So that's why I love this card so much. I think this card is awesome. It has a great graveyard effect as well to recover banished dragon rulers. It says during your main phase, banish this card from your grave, target any number of banished dragon rulers with different attributes, and return them to the graveyard. You can only activate one of these effects per turn, not both, but it's great. It's great follow-up as well. So essentially the plan is set up these two on the first turn, have this card face down, and then outgrind from there. Which I think is awesome and fun and exactly the way how I want to play this deck. Now, you guys are asking a very good question, which is this card searchable? The answer, no, unfortunately not. They did not give Dragon Rulers a way to search this card, which I think is very sad. You cannot search this card. The only thing that we have, and this is why this version of the deck is what I've been preferring, right? Is we have to power through our deck, we have to deck thin, and we have to draw cards. That's all we've got. So we cannot set this up every single time, but there's a couple of tools that we have, thankfully, that can make it happen. So, and this is the reason for this entire version. I'm playing Sacred Sword of 7 stars, which banishes a level 7 monster and then draws you 2 cards, but that's once per turn. If you draw multiple copies, you can't use them. This is why I've built this deck around this card. All right, Super Rejuvenation. And it'll make sense in a second, trust me. So this card, for anyone who's played in Dragon Ruler format in 2013, you're going to remember this card. It was a menace back then. This card says, during the end, it's a quick play spell. During the end phase, you draw cards for every dragon that has been tributed or discarded from your hand during the entire turn. So basically, if you discard Stream and another dragon to summon title from the deck, if you activate Super Yugioh, it draws 2 cards. However, on average in this deck, if you don't brick, this card is consistently going to draw you 6 or even 8 cards. So the new baby dragon, right, Spectral, the new baby Spectral discards itself and another dragon to search 2 dragon rulers from your deck. So this card alone, you discard this and another dragon, search 2 baby rulers. If you can discard these other 2 baby rulers, that's already going to be 6 cards that you draw in the end phase. Then you can do other things, like honestly, with the armed dragons in rotation, you have infinite discard fodder. You can search more baby dragons with Chasma. You can even tribute summon the dragon rulers sometimes, because the deck doesn't really have a normal summon. So you can tribute summon dragon rulers to draw more cards. And if you draw into extra copies of Super Rejuvenation in your end phase, you can also activate them because it's a quick play spell. So you can draw more cards with those as well. And it's the same amount. You don't have to activate this card and then count after. It counts retroactively as well. Like if you draw this at the end of your turn, you can activate another copy to draw infinite cards. Which was really broken in 2013, which is why it got banned. However, in TCG right now, this card is at 3 again. And no one cares because it's the end phase. You're drawing cards in the end phase if you have already full comboed. Who cares? Well, I do. And now you're going to ask the next question. How does that help with setting up Here There Be Dragons? Because it's a quick play spell and we're in the end phase. How can I set it as an interruption on the opponent's turn? And that was a huge problem for me that I talked about in one of my videos after I presented this deck for the first time. I was like, it's unfortunate we can't search this card. And if I draw it in the end phase, I can't set it. Someone suggested a card in that video. That's a while ago at this point, and I think the card came out right around that time. It was in Doom of Dimensions. It's called Genesys, the Genesys Glutton. This card is basically, it's very funny. That's why I'm mentioning this again, because the timeline for this was so perfect. Okay, I played this deck for the first time at YCS Lille public events for Genesys format. Okay, and around the time of YCS Lille, Doom of Dimension came out, right? That was the first YCS after, like, we got Marshmallow and stuff in the TCG. That was Doom of Dimension release YCS, basically. It happened like 2 days after the set came out. And then I presented this deck, and I presented the problem of not being able to set Here They Be Dragons if I draw it with Super Yugioh. And someone said, like, oh, in this set that came out 2 days ago, there's a card called Genesys, the Genesys Glutton, which is a rank 7 dragon rulers. This card has 700 attack, gains 700 attack for each material attached to it once per chain. When a normal or quick play spell card is activated, quick effect, attach that card on the field to this card. And if you do, this card is unaffected by that card. During the end phase, you can set one spell card that is attached to this card. So what you do basically is, if you full combo with this deck and you have a Super Yugioh, this is not very unrealistic. You summon Chasma on your first turn, you summon Eclipse on your first turn, you summon Genesys on your first turn. You go to the end phase. You resolve your Super Rejuvenation. You draw infinite cards. You draw Here There Be Dragons. You activate Here There Be Dragons. You chain Genesys to it. Genesys attaches Here There Be Dragons. And then, because you're still in the end phase, you can use Genesys to set this. And then you have it on your opponent's turn. So essentially, that is the full combo of this deck. If I can achieve this, then I'm happy. All right. If I can summon 3 rank 7s on the first turn and resolve a Super Rejuvenation, then I'm cooking, right? And it's not that unrealistic for this deck. So yeah, that's essentially the idea behind this. I do think that is a high enough ceiling for me to play this deck without having to play like tuners and make it more combo heavy and less consistent and stuff like that. I think this is sufficient, at least in theory. And basically what this means is you just focus. These are the important cards in the extra deck, basically, right? You've got any amount of Chasmas, any amount of Eclipses, any amount of Disasters. I'm gonna be honest with you, I would, before Cool Tune was a thing, right? Before Cool Tune was a thing, I used to play 2/2/2 of the Dragon Rulers, but now that they've got extra deck banishes in the format, I think I would play 3/3/3, because I'm gonna be honest with you, the other Exceed monsters that you can play in this deck, they just don't come up very often because these are so good. So I would say these 11 are good, and then you just play some rank 7 utility. You can play Dracosac, you can play Big Eye, you can play Volo for Nijays, the Darkest Dragon Doom Rider, you can play Blaze, Supreme Ruler of all dragons. You can play the Dark Armed Dragon, actually. I should have that one too. Hold up. Dude, I love the fact that I sorted my stuff alphabetically now. If I ever forget a card for stream, I find it so quickly. You can play this guy. You have 10 points for Typhon. That's what I've been doing. Yes, when I played this deck at YCS Lille, I played Zeus, Typhon for 30 points and 70 points for Dragon. You can do that. But Typhon is good in this deck. Yeah, you can play Typhon. Definitely. Number 76 is also decent. Is number 76 Titanic Moth? No, right? What's number 76? Because Titanic Moth is number 28, isn't it? Oh, Harmonizer, right? The Grady L thingy. Yeah, I don't know if you need that. But yeah, these are all options. Typhon is an option. Yeah, but like, this is just some rank 7 utility. They don't come up very often, but sometimes, you know, stealing your opponent's monster with Big Eye or having removal from Dracosac, it can be nice. So let me do a quick count on how many cards we have in the main deck. So we're gonna be playing, let me sort all these Dragon Rules. We're gonna be playing 3 Blasters. We're gonna be playing 3 Tempest. The reason these two are the most important, in my opinion, is because Blaster, you always want one in the deck so that your Chasma can pop. Also, Blaster is the biggest one. I think that's why Blaster is important to have at 3, because it's big and you need it in the deck so that your Chasma can pop a card on the field. Tempest is the most important one. I don't know if I said that. Did I say Blaster was the most important one? Blaster is important. Tempest is the most important one. Because when you banish Tempest, you can search the Armed Dragons. That is, in my opinion, I don't know how many of these we're going to fit, but the Armed Dragons are really important to have so that you can facilitate all your discards. So I think Tempest is very, very important for its search effect. The least important ones are Tidal and Redox, because their discard effects are not that relevant. This one is Foolish. This one is Reborn, which are both good. They're not irrelevant, but they're the least relevant. So that's why I've been doing 2 and 2 on these. That was my ratio with the big Dragon Rulers. And so far, if we decide to not play Typhon, we could play another copy of one of these, or we could spend 10 points on other non-engine. That's something we could do. And then for the babies, obviously, you're going to play 3 copies of Spectral, the new one, the new light one. This is by far the best baby ruler, because it says discard this and another dragon and search 2 Dragon Rulers. This is insane. And then the worst one is probably Nebulous, because Nebulous is discard, and a Dark or Dragon, and then target 2 banished Dragon Rulers and special summon them. This is technically a really good ability because it gives you follow-up and it summons back Dragon Rulers that are already banished, which is neat for recursion. However, it's not a starter, and you can usually search it. So I think 1 Nebulous is completely sufficient. And then for the babies, I've just been running 2-2-2-2, which is the standard from back in the day. I'm not sure, honestly, if you could play more, but the space is going to be really tight. So this is like, I would say, it feels like the perfect amount of Dragon Rulers, but it's also, I think, the minimum. Like, I think there's a world where you play more baby rulers and more big rulers if you can fit them. If that's what you want to prioritize, is as much gas and consistency as possible. I think specifically a 3rd Lightning could be good because you want to get to Tempest as fast as you can. So I think a third lightning could be a consideration as well. So this is 22 cards, okay? This is 22 cards, and then we're playing 3 Here They Be Dragons, 3 Super Rejuves, and 3 Sacred Sword of 7 Stars, which puts us to a total of 31 already. So you can already see where the problem is. If we play the 9 Armed Dragons here, the full package, we're already at 40 cards with 0 non-engine. Which I actually don't really have an issue with that. I wouldn't even mind. Also, there's Pile Armed Dragon, which you can't play as a one of here. But this would already be 41 cards. We would, this is kind of like what I mean. The way I want to play this deck, the way I interpret the playstyle of this deck, is kind of like, it's very limited in terms of non-engine. But to be honest, this deck doesn't want to draw that much non-engine. Like, you don't want to have 2 or 3 hand traps in hand, because you just want to have all stuff that you can discard for your dragon rulers. So I really like the way this deck looks, honestly. I've not been, as you can see from the sleeves here, I've been playing 2, 2, and 2 on the armed dragons. That's why these are in other sleeves. So I've been doing, this was my armed dragon ratio, 7 of them. But I would really like to play more, even if I can. Pile Armed Dragon is a card that you can search with these 2 and with Tempest. This unfortunately does not have an effect when it's discarded. Instead, it's another one that can discard. This card says you can send one other Wind Dragon monster or one other level 7 or higher dragon monster from your hand to the grave to special summon this card. And then it can send an armed dragon monster from hand or deck to the graveyard and then target a face-up monster you control. That targeted monster gains attack, blah, blah, blah. So it's a level 7 that can summon itself by discarding a big dragon ruler from your hand or an armed dragon. So it can trigger the armed dragons, and discarding the big dragons is kind of free. So it's a free level 7 body. And then it can also send an armed dragon from your deck to your grave, which triggers one of their effects. So I've been liking this as a one-of, because you can search it with so many cards. And sometimes you just need one extra level 7 body. And so Pile Armed Dragon has been really good as a one-of. One thing I would like to play, maybe, I don't know, because what we could do is we could just max out on armed dragons, right? We could just max out on armed dragons, and then we would have a 40 card deck, and that could work. Which is basically all gas, no brakes, literally 0 non-engine. One thing I'm a little tempted to do, and I think this is more like my advanced constructed brain, right? My advanced constructed brain really wants to put non-engine in here that I can draw with Super Rejuve in my end phase, right? Something like a Nibiru that I can draw when I'm resolving Super Rejuvenation for 8 cards. Even if it's just a one-of, right? It's not that unlikely that I'll find it. It's not that unlikely that I find a Nibiru if I play 1 copy, right? Because at the moment, remember, we are at 90 points. We have 10 points to spend, which would fit 1 Nibiru. 1. But when I'm resolving Super Rejuvenation, I can just draw that. You know, if I resolve a Super Rejuve for 6 or 8 cards, and then I draw another Super Rejuve, like the chance I'm finding that Nibiru is actually not bad, right? Any good free quick play you could use twice on your turn and opponent's turn? You mean like if I already have Here There Be Dragons and I summon the Kerzeps, and then I think if I already have Kerzeps, I can just not, if I already have Here There Be Dragons, I can just not summon Kerzeps and instead summon, like, I don't know if there's another interruption here even, but I think this is the interruption, right? This is a quick effect if it has a dragon as material. Yeah, this is a rank 7 that detaches 2 material and pops a face-up card on the field. And it's a quick effect if it has a dragon. So if I already have this quick play spell, I don't have to make Kerzeps, I just make this. So yeah, that's my little presentation on dragon rulers. It's a really fun deck. It's a really fun deck. I like it so much in Genesys, and this is one of the reasons why I like Genesys is just because from my experience, this deck works in Genesys, but it has no chance in Advanced Constructed. It's got no chance in Advanced Constructed because you're just all engine just doesn't work in Genesys in Advanced Constructed format. In Genesys it can, I think. It would maybe it would be a different story if there was actually decks in the format that can't out disaster, but like it's not Liger Dancer. It doesn't like Regeki the board. So as soon as your opponent plays a deck that can summon a monster that's bigger than disaster, they win. They win on the spot. So yeah. So yeah, any Axis Code or any Gorgon of Zilophonia, any whatever, it just beats the disaster. So you don't even have that win con, right? But it's a cool deck. So for the honestly, for the side deck, I'm not sure. Like I've been playing Twin Twisters in this deck because all the dragons are kind of like free discards. You could play Ultimate Slayer to facilitate. You have the extra deck space to play Ultimate Slayer is what I'm trying to say. Lava Golem is good in this deck because you don't need your normal summon. Lava Golem is an option. Back row removal with Cosmic or MST. You can play more of it. I think Kaijus are good. Probably play the level 7. I just have Gamma Seal here. You can play DD Crow, Skullmeister. Like this is just standard stuff for Genesis format. One card I think this deck can play that not everyone can play is Photon Cerberus. This card is kind of interesting in Genesis format as well if your deck doesn't need the normal summon. This is kind of like Denko Sekka light, because Denko Sekka costs points in Genesis format and Photon Cerberus doesn't. Photon Cerberus says, during the turn this card was normal summoned, neither player can activate trap cards while this card is face up on the field. This does not activate. This is immediately applied once you summon it. So if your opponent doesn't have a counter trap to negate it, it is basically Denko Sekka or like in a little bit weaker. But yeah. Where is Ankh finding these cards? Okay, so this card, I am aware of this card because it was summoned against me when I played Paleo back in the day. That's like 10 years ago at this point. Well, yeah. That is Dragon Rulers. And honestly, depending on how the cool tune yapping goes, I might play this deck, to be honest with you, because this deck is so fun, man. It is my favorite deck in Genesis format. The one that I've had the most fun with playing Genesis format so far was this deck by far.